What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Miguelito To Toe, where we talk boxing, the fighters, the business, and everything happening both inside and outside the ring. Today, we're stepping back into Fightland. We made it through episode 1, we made it through episode 2, and now we're at episode 3, No Innocence. And after watching this episode, I've got to say, Fightland is starting to heat up. Now, before we go any further, spoiler warning. This review contains spoilers for episode 3, so if you haven't watched the episode yet, go watch it first. Now let's get into it. Episode 3 feels like the point where Duke's plan starts becoming much more dangerous. The first two episodes were about establishing Duke's return and showing us the world he's stepping back into. But episode 3 starts pulling Duke deeper into the Marshall family's world. And that's the thing about revenge. You might think you're controlling the situation, but sometimes the situation starts controlling you. That's exactly what I think is happening to Duke. Duke comes back to London with a mission. He wants revenge. He believes Kingsley Marshall was responsible for setting him up and destroying his life. But now Duke is getting closer and closer to the people surrounding Kingsley's empire. And the deeper he gets, the harder it's going to be to simply walk away. That's what makes this episode interesting. Duke isn't standing outside looking in anymore. He's becoming part of the game. And once you're inside, there are consequences. One of the biggest things episode 3 does is bring Zeke further into the spotlight. And this is where things get interesting. Zeke has his own ambitions. He isn't simply sitting around waiting for somebody else to tell him what to do. And Duke quickly discovers that working with people like Zeke comes with risk. Because when you're dealing with people who have their own agendas, you have to constantly ask yourself, who's really using who? Is Duke using Zeke, or is Zeke using Duke? Or are both of them using each other? That's the kind of tension I like. Let's talk about the title, No Innocence. I think that's a perfect title for this episode. Because by this point in the story, it's becoming harder and harder to look at anybody and say, this person is completely innocent. Everybody has an agenda. Everybody has something to gain. Everybody has something to lose. And everybody is making choices. That's especially important for Duke. Because he's not simply the good guy walking into a room full of bad guys. Duke has his own demons. He has his own mission. And he's willing to do things that he might not have done before. Now, this is where I have to bring it back to boxing. Because Fightland may be a crime drama, but boxing is still the foundation underneath everything. And boxing is a perfect metaphor for what's happening to Duke. In boxing, you can have a plan going into the fight. You can study your opponent. You can work on your strategy. You can know exactly what you're going to do. Then the bell rings, and your opponent hits you with something you didn't expect. Now you've got to adjust. That's Duke right now. His original plan is being tested, and he's having to adjust round by round. Another thing I appreciate about Fightland is how it continues to show that boxing isn't just about what happens inside the ropes. There's an entire business surrounding the fighter: promoters, money, power, connections, and reputation. Duke understands that world because he was once at the top of it. But now he's coming back into it with a completely different mindset. He's not simply trying to become champion again. He's trying to use the system to accomplish something bigger, and that's dangerous. For me, episode 3 works because the stakes feel higher. The first episode introduced the story. The second episode started building the plan. Episode 3 starts showing us what happens when that plan gets complicated. I also like that Duke isn't written as somebody who has something figured out. He's smart, he's experienced, he's a former champion, but he's also making mistakes. And that's important because if Duke was always 10 steps ahead of everybody, the show wouldn't be nearly as interesting. Now, I'm still going to keep it real. There are moments where I wish the show would give us more actual boxing. I'm watching a series about a former heavyweight champion. Give me some rounds. Give me some combinations. Give me some footwork. Give me a fight. But I understand why the writers are keeping the focus on the crime story. The boxing is really the world that Duke comes from. The revenge story is the world he's entering. And those two worlds are slowly colliding. Here's where I think Duke's biggest problem is right now. He thinks he can control everything, and that's dangerous. Because revenge can make you believe you're thinking clearly when you're actually becoming more emotional. Duke has spent 8 years thinking about what happened, 8 years imagining what he would do when he got home. But reality is always different from the plan, and now reality is fighting back. The biggest strength of episode 3 is the tension. You constantly feel like something could go wrong, and when you're watching a show like Fightland, that's exactly what you want. Because everybody is hiding something. Everybody has information that somebody else wants, and nobody seems completely trustworthy, and that's a dangerous combination. So, what's my rating for Fightland Episode 3 No Innocence? I'm giving this one a 8.5 out of 10. I think Episode 3 is another step up from the beginning of the series. The story is getting deeper. Duke's mission is getting more complicated. Zeke is becoming more important, and the Marshall family situation is getting more dangerous. Most importantly, I want to see what happens next, and that's exactly what you want from a television series. What Fightland is doing really well is making us question who the good guys actually are, because maybe there aren't any. Maybe that's the whole point. No innocence. Everybody has a motive, everybody has a price, and everybody is fighting for something. For Duke, it's revenge. For others, it's power. For some, it's money. And eventually, those goals are going to collide. And when they do, we're going to have one hell of a fight. But that's my review of Fightland Episode 3 No Innocence. Now, I want to hear from you. What did you think about Episode 3? Do you trust Zeke? Do you think Duke is getting too deep into the Marshall family's world? And most importantly, do you think Duke is still in control of his plan? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Miguelito To Toe, and hit that notification bell. We're going to keep breaking down Fightland, episode by episode. This is Miguelito To Toe. That's all for this round. Keep your guard up, and I'll see you in the next one.